My name is Zektar, and I am a Vorthak diplomat from the Outer Rim colonies. For 30 cycles, I have traveled between star systems, negotiating trade agreements and settling disputes between different species. I thought I had seen everything the galaxy could offer. Wars, peace treaties, alien cultures so strange they defied logic. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I witnessed on Station Omega-7 when the humans arrived. The day started like any other aboard the massive trading station. Merchants from dozens of species hawked their wares in the central plaza. The air recyclers hummed their familiar tune, mixing the scents of exotic spices with the metallic tang of ship fuel. I was reviewing contracts in my quarters when the emergency alarms began wailing. At first, I assumed it was another drill. Station Omega-7 sat on the edge of contested space, where 3 different empires met in an uneasy truce. Drills were common, but when my communication panel lit up with urgent messages, I knew this was real. All diplomatic personnel report to the command center immediately. The station commander's voice crackled through the speakers. We have a situation. I made my way through corridors filled with panicking civilians. Shop owners were closing their stalls. Families were gathering their belongings, and security forces were running toward the docking bays. The fear in the air was thick enough to taste. The command center buzzed with activity when I arrived. Holographic displays showed dozens of ships approaching the station. But these weren't ordinary vessels. They were sleek, angular craft that moved with deadly precision. Ships I had never seen before. What's the situation? I asked Commander Grixta, a seasoned Kelloran who had run the station for over a decade. His 4 eyes were fixed on the main display, all of them wide with concern. Pirates, he said through gritted teeth. The Bloodfang Syndicate. They're demanding we surrender the station and all cargo vessels currently docked. I felt my stomach drop. The Bloodfang Syndicate was notorious throughout this sector. They were ruthless killers who showed no mercy to those who opposed them. Their leader, a massive brutak named Vexmol, was wanted in 17 different star systems for murder, slavery, and worse crimes. How many ships? I asked, though I feared the answer. 47 combat vessels, Grixta replied. We have 12 security ships and some civilian craft with light weapons. We're outnumbered 4 to 1. The situation looked hopeless. Station Omega-7 housed over 200,000 beings from various species. If we fought, most of them would die. If we surrendered, they would become slaves or worse. I had witnessed the aftermath of Bloodfang raids before. It was not something any civilized being should see. Sir, one of the communication officers called out. We're receiving a transmission from an unknown vessel. They're requesting permission to dock. Unknown vessel? Grixta's tail twitched with annoyance. We're about to be attacked by pirates and someone wants to dock for shopping? No, sir. They say they're here to help. The main screen shifted to show a new ship approaching the station. It was smaller than the pirate vessels, with smooth lines and a design I didn't recognize. The hull was a dark gray color that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Who are they? I asked. The communication officer checked his readouts. They identify themselves as human. A chill ran down my spine. I had heard whispers about humans in the outer colonies. Stories that seemed too incredible to believe. Tales of a species that had emerged from a small planet called Earth and spread across their local systems with frightening speed. Some said they were peaceful explorers. Others claimed they were something far more dangerous. 1 ship, Grixta muttered. What can 1 ship do against 47? Permission to dock, human vessel, he said into his communicator. Negative, Commander, came the reply in a calm, measured voice. We won't be docking. We'll handle this from here. Handle what? You're 1 ship against an entire pirate fleet. We've handled worse, the human replied. There was something in that voice, a confidence that seemed almost arrogant. Recommend you seal the station and prepare for debris cleanup. Before anyone could respond, the human ship accelerated past the station toward the approaching pirate fleet. It moved faster than anything I had ever seen, covering the distance in seconds rather than minutes. They're insane, Grixta whispered. I watched the tactical display with fascination and horror. The single human ship was racing directly toward 47 pirate vessels. It was suicide. No species in the galaxy was that reckless. Sir, the pirates are hailing us, the communication officer announced. Put them through, Grixta ordered. The main screen filled with the ugly face of Vexmol himself. The brutak leader was massive even by his species standards. with scarred hide and cybernetic implants covering half his skull. "Station Commander," Vexmall growled, his voice like grinding metal. "You have 10 minutes to surrender all cargo and civilians. Refuse and we will take them anyway after we kill everyone who resists." "We have families aboard this station," Grixta replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Innocent people who have done nothing to you." Vexmall laughed, a sound that made my blood freeze. "Innocent people make the best slaves." 10 minutes. The transmission cut off, leaving us in silence. I stared at the tactical display, watching the human ship continue its impossible charge toward the pirate fleet. In a few minutes, it would be vaporized by overwhelming firepower. Then the station would fall and everyone aboard would face a fate worse than death. "Commander," I said quietly, "perhaps we should consider evacuation." Grixta nodded grimly. "Begin emergency evacuation procedures. All civilian transports to—" "Sir," the tactical officer interrupted. "The human ship just fired." We all turned to the display, expecting to see the futile flash of weapons that would barely scratch the pirate ships. Instead, we saw something that defied everything I thought I knew about warfare. The human ship unleashed a barrage of projectiles that moved faster than our sensors could track. But these weren't ordinary weapons. They seemed to bend space itself, creating corridors of destruction that carved through the pirate formation like a blade through soft flesh. In the span of 3 seconds, 12 pirate ships simply ceased to exist. The command center fell silent except for the steady beeping of instruments. Everyone stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 12 pirate ships had been there moments ago. Now there was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. "How is that possible?" someone whispered. Commander Grixta's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Scan for survivors," he ordered. "No life signs detected from the destroyed vessels," the tactical officer reported, his voice hollow with shock. The remaining 35 pirate ships had stopped their advance. They hung in space like predators suddenly realizing they might be prey instead. I could imagine the chaos aboard their command vessels as they tried to understand what had just happened. The human ship continued its approach, moving with the same casual confidence as before. It was as if destroying a third of the pirate fleet had been a minor inconvenience rather than an impossible feat. "Sir, incoming transmission from Vexmall," the communication officer announced. "Put it through," Grixta said. The pirate leader's face appeared on screen again, but his arrogant expression had changed to one of fury mixed with uncertainty. "What kind of weapons was that?" he demanded. "What species are you?" The response came not from the station, but from the human ship. The same calm voice as before, but now I could hear something else underneath it, something cold and dangerous. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel Retribution. You have threatened civilians under our protection. Withdraw immediately and you will be allowed to leave." Vexmall's scarred face twisted with rage. "Humans, I've heard the rumors, but I didn't believe them. You think 12 lucky shots make you warriors? I have 35 ships left. You have one." 35 ships full of murderers and slavers," Captain Chen replied, "against 1 ship full of humans who really don't like murderers and slavers. I'd say the odds are about right." The audacity of it took my breath away. This human was actually taunting a pirate fleet that still outnumbered her more than 30 to 1. Either humans were the bravest species in the galaxy or they were completely insane. "You have 60 seconds to change course," Captain Chen continued. After that, I stopped being polite. Vexmall roared with laughter. "Polite? You destroyed 12 of my ships?" "That was polite. I gave them a quick death instead of letting them suffocate in space. You won't get the same courtesy." The transmission ended, leaving us in stunned silence. I had negotiated with dozens of different species over the years, and I thought I understood the psychology of combat. Species fought for territory, resources, or survival. They used intimidation and showed of force to avoid actual conflict when possible. But this human seemed to welcome the fight. "Sir, the pirates are moving again," the tactical officer reported. The remaining pirate ships had formed into attack formations, spreading out to surround the lone human vessel. It was a standard tactic designed to overwhelm a single target with crossfire from multiple angles. Against any known ship, it would have been effective, but as I watched, the human ship began to change. Sections of its hull shifted and rearranged themselves like living tissue. Weapons ports opened across its surface, revealing an arsenal that should have been impossible to fit inside such a small vessel. The ship itself seemed to grow larger as if space was bending around it. "What kind of technology is that?" I breathed. "Unknown," Grixta replied. "I've never seen anything like it." The pirate ships opened fire first, unleashing a devastating barrage of plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, and energy beams. The space around the human ship lit up like a miniature star as hundreds of weapons struck its position. For a moment, I thought it was over. No ship could survive that kind of concentrated firepower. But as the energy dissipated, the human vessel emerged completely unharmed. Whatever shield technology they possessed had absorbed the entire attack without visible effect. "Impossible," the tactical officer whispered. Then the human ship returned. Fire. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about warfare. The human weapons didn't just destroy enemy ships. They seemed to rewrite the laws of physics around them. Some pirate vessels simply collapsed in on themselves, crushed by localized gravity fields. Others were torn apart by energy that moved in impossible patterns, defying the basic principles of ballistics. One group of 5 ships tried to ram the human vessel in a desperate suicide attack. The human ship split into multiple copies of itself, each one real and solid, surrounding the pirates before they could react. When the copies merged back together moments later, the 5 ships were gone. "Did anyone else see that?" Grixta asked in a voice barely above a whisper. "Multiple target locks," the tactical officer confirmed, though he sounded like he didn't believe his own readings. The human ship appeared in 7 different locations simultaneously. I watched in fascination as the battle continued. Each pirate ship that fell revealed new aspects of human technology that shouldn't have existed. Weapons that fired bullets through different dimensions, shields that redirected attacks back at their sources, and movement patterns that violated several fundamental laws of physics. But it wasn't just the technology that impressed me. It was the way the human fought. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary destruction. Each attack was precisely calculated to disable or destroy specific targets with minimal collateral damage. When 3 pirates tried to use a civilian transport as a shield, the human weapon somehow curved around the innocent ship to strike only the pirates. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from one of the pirate ships," the communication officer announced. "They're requesting terms for surrender." "Put them through," Grixta ordered. A Kelleran pirate appeared on screen, his scales pale with fear. "Please, we surrender. We didn't know you were protected by humans." "We'll leave immediately," Captain Chen's voice responded before anyone on the station could speak. "Too late for that. You came here to murder and enslave civilians. That was your choice, but we surrender. The laws of warfare don't apply to pirates," the human interrupted. "You gave up those protections when you chose to prey on the innocent." Another pirate ship died, consumed by what looked like controlled antimatter detonation. The remaining vessels scattered, abandoning their formation in blind panic. But the human ship was everywhere at once, cutting off escape routes and hurting the pirates like a predator playing with its prey. "This isn't a battle," I realized aloud. "It's an execution." Commander Grixta looked at me with all 4 eyes. "What do you mean?" "The human could have destroyed them all in the first attack. Those initial 12 ships weren't killed by lucky shots. They were a warning, a demonstration. She's been giving them chances to surrender, and they've refused everyone." As if to confirm my words, Captain Chen's voice filled the command center again. "Last chance. Any ship that powers down weapons and submits to station security will be spared. You have 30 seconds. I counted the seconds in my head, watching as 3 more pirate vessels shut down their weapons and began broadcasting surrender signals. The human ship left them alone, focusing on the remaining 18 ships that continued to fight. What followed was less a battle than a masterclass in applied violence. The humans didn't just win, they demonstrated complete control over the engagement. Every pirate ship was destroyed in a different way, as if the human was showing off the variety of weapons at her disposal. When it was over, only the 3 surrendered vessels remained intact, drifting powerless in space surrounded by debris that had once been the most feared pirate fleet in the sector. The human ship returned to its original configuration and began moving slowly back toward the station. In the span of 15 minutes, it had single-handedly destroyed 44 combat vessels and captured 3 others without taking any apparent damage. "Captain Chen," Commander Grixta said into his communicator, his voice shaking slightly, This is Station Omega-7. We thank you for your assistance. Just doing our job, Commander. We'll transfer the prisoners to your security forces and be on our way. Wait, I found myself saying. Captain, may I ask you something? Go ahead. Why did you give them so many chances to surrender? You could have ended this in seconds. There was a pause before the human replied. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more thoughtful. Because every choice matters. Every decision to show mercy or to take a life changes who we are. We could have killed them all instantly, but that would have made us no better than they were. We gave them chances to choose differently. I felt a chill run down my spine as the implications of her words sank in. The humans hadn't unleashed hell because they enjoyed violence. They had done it because sometimes hell was the only language that evil understood. 2 hours after the battle ended, I found myself walking through the station's corridors in a daze. The normal sounds of commerce had returned. Merchants were reopening their shops. Families were emerging from emergency shelters, and life was slowly returning to normal. But I couldn't shake the memory of what I had witnessed. The 3 captured pirate ships hung in the station's security dock like trophies. Their crews had been transferred to holding cells, and I had watched the entire process through the command center's monitors. What struck me most was how the humans handled the prisoners. Captain Chen had personally overseen the transfer, and her behavior was nothing like what I expected from someone who had just unleashed such devastating firepower. She treated the captured pirates with clinical efficiency but without cruelty. Medical attention was provided for the wounded, and food and water were distributed according to standard prisoner protocols. When one young Kelleran pirate broke down crying, begging not to be executed, Captain Chen had stopped and spoken to him directly. "You're not going to be executed," she had said in that same calm voice. "You'll be processed according to galactic law and turned over to the appropriate authorities. What happens after that depends on what crimes you've committed." The pirate had looked at her in confusion. But you destroyed my friends, my captain, everyone I knew." "I destroyed murderers and slavers who refused to surrender," Chen had corrected. "You chose differently. You powered down your weapons when given the chance. That choice saved your life and the lives of your crewmates." Now, as I walked through the station, I couldn't stop thinking about that exchange. The humans had the power to destroy entire fleets, but they chose restraint when possible. They offered mercy even to their enemies, but showed no hesitation in eliminating those who rejected it. My contemplation was interrupted by an announcement over the station's communication system. "Diplomat Zektar, please report to Docking Bay 12. You have visitors requesting a meeting." Curiosity overrode my exhaustion, and I made my way to the designated docking bay. What I found there challenged my assumptions once again. The human ship had docked, and a small group of humans stood near the airlock. But these weren't the hardened warriors I had imagined. They looked remarkably ordinary. Captain Chen appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Her uniform was practical rather than intimidating, and she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone comfortable with authority. The 2 humans flanking her were equally unremarkable. One was a young man with dark skin and an easy smile. The other was an older woman with silver hair and the bearing of a scientist or engineer. They could have been shopkeepers or teachers from any civilian station in the galaxy. "Diplomat Zektar?" Captain Chen extended her hand in what I recognized as a human greeting gesture. "I'm Sarah Chen. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us." I accepted the handshake, noting that her grip was firm but not aggressive. "Captain Chen, I admit I'm curious about this meeting, and frankly still trying to process what I witnessed today." She smiled, and the expression transformed her face completely. Gone was the cold efficiency I had heard in her voice during the battle. This was someone who laughed with her children and worried about her crew. I can imagine. We know our intervention methods can be dramatic to outside observers. That's actually why we wanted to speak with you. "Intervention methods?" I repeated. The young man stepped forward. "I'm Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Communication Specialist. What you saw today is part of a larger human initiative. We've been monitoring this sector for several months, tracking the Bloodfang Syndicate's activities." "We knew they were planning to hit this station," the older woman added. "I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, Tactical Analyst. We've been studying pirate operations throughout the Outer Rim, looking for patterns and opportunities to intervene." I felt my confusion deepening. "You've been hunting pirates? Why? This isn't human space." Captain Chen gestured toward a small seating area near the docking bay observation windows. Would you mind if we sat down? This might take a while to explain. As we settled into chairs overlooking the vast expanse of space, Chen began to speak. 3 years ago, human exploration fleets began encountering the aftermath of pirate raids in the outer systems. Entire colonies enslaved or destroyed, families torn apart, children sold into slavery, species driven to near extinction by systematic predation. Her voice remained level, but I could hear the steel underneath it. At first, our government tried to work through established diplomatic channels. We filed complaints with the Galactic Trade Council, requested joint enforcement actions, appealed to regional authorities. And, I prompted, and we were told it wasn't our problem, Lieutenant Webb said with barely controlled anger. Multiple species told us that piracy was just a fact of life in the Outer Rim. That intervention would be too expensive and too dangerous. That some losses were acceptable as long as they happened to someone else. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. We ran projections based on current pirate activity. At existing rates of expansion, the Blood Fang Syndicate and groups like them would control 40% of Outer Rim trade routes within 5 years. Entire species would be reduced to slave populations. So you decided to intervene on your own, I said, beginning to understand. We decided that some things are more important than diplomatic protocol, Captain Chen confirmed. Humans have a saying, evil triumphs when good people do nothing. We decided we weren't going to do nothing. I looked out at the debris field that had once been a pirate fleet. Your weapons, that technology, I've never seen anything like it. Most species develop defensive technologies to protect themselves, Dr. Vasquez explained. Humans have always been different. We developed weapons to protect others. Our entire history is built on the idea that the strong should protect the weak, Lieutenant Webb added. It's not always pretty and we don't always get it right, but it's who we are. Captain Chen stood and walked to the observation window. We know other species see us as violent, as unpredictable, and maybe we are. But violence isn't always evil. Sometimes it's the only tool that works against true evil. The pirates you destroyed today, I said quietly. You didn't just kill them to save the station. You killed them to send a message. We killed them because they chose to be killers, Chen corrected. But yes, there was a message. Pirates throughout this sector now know that human protection isn't theoretical. It's real, it's immediate, and it's absolute. Dr. Vasquez pulled out a data tablet and showed me a star chart. Intelligence reports suggest 7 other pirate groups were planning coordinated attacks on civilian targets this month. As of 2 hours ago, 5 of them have called off their operations. Word travels fast, Lieutenant Webb said with satisfaction. I studied the star chart, seeing dozens of systems marked with various threat levels. How many ships like yours are out there? Enough, Captain Chen said simply. The evasion was clearly intentional, but I didn't press. Instead, I asked the question that had been bothering me since the battle ended. Why are you telling me this? You could have left without explanation. Captain Chen returned to her seat. Because we need allies, Diplomat Zektar. Humans can destroy pirate fleets and protect civilian populations, but we can't rebuild civilizations or establish lasting peace. That requires diplomacy, trade agreements, cultural exchange, things that require trust and cooperation. You want me to speak for you, I realized. We want you to speak for the truth, she corrected. Tell other species what you saw here. Not just the weapons or the destruction, but the choices we made, the mercy we offered, the restraint we showed. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward intently. Humans aren't trying to build an empire or conquer territory. We're trying to create a galaxy where children can grow up without fear of slavers, where merchants can trade without hiring private armies, where species can develop and explore without predators hunting them. And if they resist your protection? I asked. If they prefer the old ways? Captain Chen's expression grew serious. Then they're free to make that choice, but they won't be free to prey on those who choose differently. I sat in silence for several minutes, processing everything I had heard. Outside the observation window, the stars looked different somehow. Less cold and distant, more like destinations waiting to be reached. What do you need from me? I finally asked. Tell them the truth, Captain Chen said simply. All of it. The good and the bad. Let them make informed decisions about what kind of galaxy they want to live in. As the humans prepared to leave, I found myself thinking about that young Kelleran pirate who had broken down crying. He was alive because he had made a choice at a crucial moment. The humans had given him that chance, even after he had participated in attacks that killed innocent people. That, I realized, was what made humans truly dangerous. Not their weapons or their technology, but their unwavering belief that everyone deserved a chance to choose differently, even their enemies. 6 months after the incident at Station Omega-7, I stood before the Galactic Trade Council on Nexus Prime, preparing to deliver the most important testimony of my diplomatic career. The Great Assembly Hall buzzed with conversations in dozens of languages as representatives from over 300 species took their seats. Word of human interventions had spread throughout the galaxy, creating waves of controversy that reached even the highest levels of interstellar government. Some species demanded action against these human aggressors who dared to interfere with established power structures. Others quietly requested human protection for their own vulnerable colonies. But very few had actually witnessed human military capabilities firsthand. That's why my testimony carried such weight. Council Speaker Vexilin, a tall ethereal being from the core worlds, called the session to order with a harmonic tone that resonated through the chamber. Diplomat, Zektar of the Vortha Confederacy will now present his first-hand account of the human intervention at Station Omega-7, the speaker announced. I stood, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon me. My prepared statement lay before me, but I found myself setting it aside. The truth needed to be told in my own words, not from a carefully crafted diplomatic document. Honored representatives, I began. 6 months ago, I believed I understood the nature of power in our galaxy. I thought strength came from the size of your fleet, the reach of your territory, or the wealth of your trade networks. I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Brutak delegation leaned forward aggressively, while the peaceful ethereals seemed to shimmer with anticipation. On that day, I watched a single human vessel face 47 pirate ships belonging to the Bloodfang Syndicate. The mathematical impossibility of their victory should have made it a brief and tragic sacrifice. Instead, it became a demonstration of something I had never encountered before. I activated the holographic display, showing the tactical recordings from Station Omega-7. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded once again. The humans possessed weapons that defied conventional understanding, I continued. But that's not what made them extraordinary. What made them extraordinary was how they used that power. The Kelleran ambassador stood abruptly. You speak of restraint, but we see only destruction. 44 ships obliterated by beings who claim to come in peace. Ambassador Grixan, I replied calmly. How many chances did the pirates receive to surrender? The Kelleran's scales darkened with anger. That's irrelevant. No species has the right to— 7, I interrupted. The humans offered surrender terms 7 separate times during a 15-minute engagement. Each offer was rejected. Each rejection cost more pirate lives. I gestured to the tactical display. The humans could have destroyed the entire fleet in the first salvo. Their opening attack was precisely calibrated to demonstrate their capability while giving the pirates time to reconsider. When that failed, they systematically eliminated only those vessels that continued to threaten civilian lives. The ethereal representative spoke in harmonious tones that translated as pure curiosity. These weapons that bend space and time, surely such technology comes with great cost. I wondered the same thing, I admitted. So I researched human development patterns. What I discovered was disturbing. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of translation devices. Humans achieved faster-than-light travel only 200 years ago. Most species require millennia to develop such advanced weapon systems. The humans accomplished it in less than 50 years. Impossible, declared the Zephyrian delegate. Our species needed 3,000 years to achieve such technological sophistication. That's because your species, like most of ours, developed technology for exploration and trade. Humans developed it for war. The statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Several delegates began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of protest and disbelief. Speaker Vexilin restored order with another harmonic tone. Diplomat Zektar, please clarify your statement. I took a deep breath, knowing that my next words would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. 3 days after the battle, I accessed human historical databases that Captain Chen provided. What I found was a species that has been at war with itself for its entire recorded history. Not occasional conflicts over resources or territory, but continuous systematic warfare spanning thousands of years. The holographic display shifted to show images from human history. Battles fought with primitive weapons, then more advanced ones, then weapons of mass destruction that could sterilize entire worlds. Humans have fought wars using stones and clubs, chemical weapons, nuclear arsenals, and eventually technology that could crack planets like eggs. They have perfected the art of killing in ways we can't imagine. Then why aren't we all dead? Asked the Aquarian representative, her translator struggling with the water-based communication method. Because humans learned something that no other species has managed, I replied. They learned to direct their violent nature outward against those who prey on the innocent, while maintaining peace among themselves. I activated another section of the display, showing recent human political structures. The Earth Defense Force isn't controlled by any single human government. It's a joint organization funded and directed by every human nation working together. Species that have been fighting each other for millennia have united around a single principle: protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Aquarian delegate's bioluminescent patches flickered in patterns that indicated deep thought. How is such cooperation possible among a naturally violent species? Because they channeled their aggression into a force for justice rather than conquest, I explained. Every human child learns about their history. They know what they're capable of when they turn their weapons on each other, so they decided to turn them on something else instead. The Brutak ambassador slammed his massive fist on his desk. You speak as if this is admirable. A species of killers roaming the galaxy, deciding who lives and dies. Ambassador Thokakar, I said, using his formal name. May I ask how many of your colonies have been attacked by pirates in the past year? The Brutak's eyes narrowed. 3 raids, 15,000 casualties. And how many human colonies have been attacked? That's not. The point is 0, I said firmly. No pirate group has successfully attacked a human-protected system in the past year. Not one. I gestured to the tactical display again. The Bloodfang Syndicate was the most powerful pirate organization in this sector. They had terrorized civilian populations for decades, while our governments debated jurisdiction and filed diplomatic protests. The humans eliminated them in 15 minutes. At what cost? Demanded the Zephyrian delegate. 3 pirates wounded in the capture process. 0 human casualties, 0 civilian casualties, and 44 murderers and slavers who will never threaten innocent people again. The chamber erupted in arguments as delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some praised human efficiency, while others condemned their methods. But underneath the chaos I could sense something else. Relief. How many species in this chamber had lost colonies to pirates? How many had watched their people suffer while bureaucrats debated response protocols? How many had secretly wished for someone with the power and will to act decisively? Speaker Vexlin called for order once again. When the chamber quieted, she addressed me directly. Diplomat Zektar, based on your observations, what are human intentions toward the galactic community? I had spent months preparing for this question. I had studied human psychology, reviewed their intervention patterns, and analyzed their diplomatic communications. But in the end, the answer came down to something simple. They want to build a galaxy where evil has consequences, I said, where predators fear their prey instead of the other way around, where strength serves justice instead of profit. And if we refuse their protection? Asked the Kelleran ambassador. Then you're free to refuse it, I replied. But you won't be free to prey on those who accept it. The Aquarian delegate's pattern shifted to what I recognized as approval. You believe humans can be trusted with such power? I thought of Captain Chen's calm voice offering surrender terms to pirates who had come to murder children. I remembered Dr. Vasquez explaining their tactical restraints and Lieutenant Webb's anger at diplomatic indifference to slavery. I believe humans can be trusted to use power the way they've always used it, I said, to protect those who need protection and to destroy those who threaten the innocent. Whether you consider that trustworthy depends on which side of that equation you're on. The chamber fell silent as delegates considered the implications of my words. In that silence, I knew that everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same now that humans had revealed their capabilities. 1 year after my testimony before the Galactic Trade Council, I found myself aboard a human diplomatic vessel heading toward the Kethmoran system. The invitation had come directly from Admiral Rebecca Torres, the commanding officer of the Earth Defense Force's Outer Rim Division. She had requested my presence as an independent observer for what she called a significant development in human galactic relations. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering efficiency. Unlike the warship I had encountered at Station Omega-7, this vessel was clearly designed for diplomacy. The corridors were wide and welcoming, with viewing ports that offered spectacular views of hyperspace. The crew moved with quiet professionalism, and I noticed that many were not human at all. Surprising, isn't it? Admiral Torres said, appearing beside me as I watched a Kelleran engineer working alongside human technicians. When we started the integration program, many people thought it wouldn't work. Turns out shared values matter more than shared biology. Admiral Torres was older than Captain Chen, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had seen too much war. But her eyes held the same calm confidence I remembered from that day at the station. "How many non-human crew members do you have?" I asked. "About 30% across the fleet," she replied. "Volunteers from species that requested protection and decided they wanted to help provide it for others. We found that former victims of piracy make some of our most dedicated defenders. As we entered the Kethmoran system, I understood why I had been brought here. The system contained 12 inhabited worlds, home to nearly 8 billion beings from various species. It was also completely surrounded by human defense platforms and patrol ships. 6 months ago, the Kethmoran Council formally requested human protection," Admiral Torres explained as we approached the primary world. The Crimson Tide Pirate Confederation had been systematically raiding their outer colonies, and their own defense forces were insufficient to stop them. "What happened to the pirates?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "They tested our defenses twice. After the second test, they decided to find easier targets elsewhere." Admiral Torres's expression remained neutral, but I caught a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Our destination was the capital city of Kethmoran Prime, where a historic ceremony was about to take place. As our shuttle descended through the atmosphere, I could see massive crowds gathered in the central plaza. Banners and decorations covered every building, and the entire city seemed to be celebrating. "What exactly am I here to witness?" I asked. "The signing of the first formal mutual defense treaty between humanity and another species," Admiral Torres replied. "After today, human protection of Kethmoran worlds won't be a unilateral intervention. It will be a legal obligation backed by galactic law." The implication struck me immediately. If other species began signing similar treaties, humans would transition from unauthorized vigilantes to legitimate peacekeepers. The political landscape of the galaxy would shift fundamentally. The ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall, a magnificent structure that could hold representatives from all 12 Kethmoran worlds. I was given a place of honor among the diplomatic observers, where I could see everything that unfolded. Prime Minister Veltara of Kethmoran was an elderly Aquarian whose bioluminescent patches glowed with obvious emotion as she addressed the crowd. "1 year ago, our children could not sleep safely in their beds," she said, her translated words carrying clearly through the hall. "Pirates raided our outer worlds with impunity, taking what they pleased and destroying what they could not steal. Our calls for help went unanswered by those who claimed to represent galactic justice." She turned toward Admiral Torres, who stood at attention in her dress uniform. "Then humans came, not seeking territory or tribute, but offering something we had forgotten could exist: protection without price." "The price was never the issue," Admiral Torres replied when invited to speak. "Justice doesn't have a price tag. Freedom isn't a commodity to be bought and sold. When innocent people suffer, those with the power to help have an obligation to act." The treaty signing itself was remarkably simple. 2 documents, one in human script and one in Kethmoran symbols, each containing the same basic pledge. Humans would defend Kethmoran worlds from external threats, and Kethmoran would provide support for human defense operations as they were able. But the real significance became clear when Prime Minister Veltara made an unexpected announcement. "As our first act under this new treaty, Kethmoran formally requests human assistance in liberating the Zephyr colonies." A shocked silence filled the hall. The Zephyr colonies had been under pirate control for over 2 years. Multiple rescue attempts by various species had failed, and the colonies were now considered a lost cause. The survivors were presumed to be slaves or worse. Admiral Torres didn't hesitate. How many colonies? How many civilians? 7 worlds. Approximately 4 million beings, though we don't know how many survive. We'll need detailed intelligence on pirate fortifications and fleet positions. Can your government provide that? We have everything our reconnaissance missions have gathered. But Admiral, the pirates have had 2 years to entrench themselves. They're using the civilians as human shields. Any rescue attempt could result in massive casualties. For the first time since I had known her, Admiral Torres smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Prime Minister, may I share something about human military philosophy? Of course, and we don't abandon our own. And as of today, those Zephyr colonists are under human protection. That makes them ours. The next 3 hours revealed aspects of human military planning that I had never imagined. Teams of specialists materialized as if from nowhere, setting up holographic displays and communication networks that connected to human forces throughout the galaxy. What had seemed like a simple diplomatic ceremony transformed into a military command center. I watched in fascination as humans demonstrated their approach to what they called liberation operations. Unlike the straightforward combat I had witnessed at Station Omega-7, this required delicate precision. The pirates were indeed using civilians as shields, and any direct assault would result in massive innocent casualties. Standard doctrine won't work here, Colonel Martinez, a human tactical specialist, explained to the assembled officers. We need to separate the pirates from their hostages before engaging. How do you separate entrenched forces without alerting them? Asked Commander Silixara, one of the Kelleran officers serving with the human fleet. Psychological warfare, Admiral Torres replied. We make them so afraid of us that they abandon their positions voluntarily. Over the following days, I witnessed the implementation of a campaign unlike anything in recorded military history. Human ships began appearing throughout the pirate-controlled system, not attacking but simply existing. They moved in unpredictable patterns, appeared and disappeared without warning, and demonstrated capabilities that defied conventional understanding. The psychological effect was exactly what the humans had calculated. Pirates who had spent 2 years feeling secure in their stolen territory suddenly found themselves watching the shadows, jumping at every sensor contact and arguing among themselves about when the inevitable attack would come. But the humans never attacked. Instead, they broadcasted continuous messages to the civilian population. Citizens of the Zephyr colonies, this is Admiral Torres of the Earth Defense Force. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. Help is coming. They also broadcasted messages to the pirates. Attention, pirate forces. You are occupying worlds under human protection. You have 72 hours to evacuate all civilian areas and withdraw to designated military zones. After that time, any pirate found in proximity to civilian populations will be considered a threat to innocent life. Will they really wait 72 hours? I asked Admiral Torres as we monitored communications from the colonies. We'll wait exactly 72 hours, she confirmed, but we're also monitoring every pirate communication. If they try to harm civilians in revenge, the waiting period ends immediately. What happened next surprised everyone, including the humans. The pirates began evacuating civilian areas on their own, without prompting or coercion. 2 years of brutal occupation ended not with a climactic battle, but with terrified criminals fleeing to defensive positions in uninhabited areas of the colonies. Why are they cooperating? Colonel Martinez wondered aloud. The answer came from intercepted pirate communications. The surviving members of the Bloodfang Syndicate, now scattered and leaderless, had spread stories throughout the criminal underworld. Stories of human weapons that bent reality, of mercy offered only once, and of pirates who had challenged humans and simply ceased to exist. They're afraid, I realized, not just of being defeated, but of being forgotten, of disappearing without a trace like their predecessors. Fear is a tool, Admiral Torres said quietly, but it's not the only tool. Watch what happens next. As the 72-hour deadline approached, human forces moved into the evacuated civilian areas. But instead of pursuing the retreating pirates, they began distributing food, medical supplies, and communication equipment to the liberated colonists. The message was clear. Humans prioritized saving lives over taking them. When the deadline expired, The remaining pirates found themselves trapped in barren areas with no strategic value and no civilian shields. They faced a choice: surrender and face galactic justice, or fight a hopeless battle against opponents who had already demonstrated their superiority. Most chose surrender. The few who chose to fight lasted less than an hour. Standing in the liberated capital of New Zephyr, watching human medics treat colonial survivors while human engineers restored damaged infrastructure, I finally understood what made humans truly dangerous to the criminal element of the galaxy. It wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their absolute commitment to the idea that innocent people mattered more than anything else. More than profit, more than territory, more than their own safety. And that commitment made them impossible to negotiate with, impossible to intimidate, and impossible to defeat. 5 years have passed since I first witnessed humans unleash hell at Station Omega 7. Today, as I prepare my final report on human integration into galactic society, I find myself aboard the newest addition to the Earth Defense Force fleet, the GCS Unity, a massive diplomatic and defense platform jointly constructed by 12 different species. The irony is not lost on me that a ship designed to project human military power is also the most successful example of interspecies cooperation in galactic history. The corridor I walked through was designed by ethereal architects, lit by Zephyrian bioluminescent technology, and maintained by an integrated crew that includes members from 19 different species. Strange how things change, isn't it? I turned to find Admiral Sarah Chen approaching. She had been promoted after the Zephyr liberation, and now commanded the entire Outer Rim Defense Initiative. Her hair was grayer than when we first met, but her eyes held the same calm determination. "Admiral Chen," I said, offering the human greeting gesture I had learned to appreciate. "I was hoping to speak with you for my report." "Of course. Shall we go to the observation deck? I find I think more clearly when I can see the stars." As we walked through the ship, I marveled at how naturally the mixed crew worked together. A Kelleran engineer was explaining fusion reactor principles to a human apprentice. 2 Aquarian diplomats were practicing human languages with help from patient tutors. In the medical bay, I glimpsed a Vorthak doctor working alongside human surgeons to treat wounded refugees from a recent pirate raid. "How many species have signed mutual defense treaties now?" I asked as we settled into comfortable chairs overlooking the vast expanse of space. 47, Admiral Chen replied, with another dozen in negotiation. More importantly, pirate activity in protected systems has dropped by 93%. And in unprotected systems? Her expression darkened slightly. Pirates aren't stupid. They've learned to avoid areas under human protection. Unfortunately, that means they concentrate their efforts on species that have refused our assistance. I pulled out my data tablet and reviewed the statistics. The numbers told a complex story. In human-protected space, civilian casualties from piracy had become virtually extinct. But in unprotected regions, attacks had actually increased as criminal organizations sought easier targets. The Brutak Confederacy still refuses all offers of assistance, I noted. "Their choice," Admiral Chen said, though I could hear regret in her voice. "We've offered protection to individual Brutak colonies, but their central government considers human presence an insult to their warrior culture. Even though 3 of their colonies have been completely destroyed this year, Ambassador Thakakar made it clear that they prefer to die free rather than live protected by humans. We respect that choice even if we disagree with it." I had interviewed Ambassador Thakakar just weeks earlier. The massive Brutak had remained defiant even as reports came in of another colony massacre. "Better to die with honor than live as pets," he had declared. But I had seen the pain in his eyes as he spoke of children who would never grow up to become warriors. "What about the syndicate problem?" I asked, referring to the latest development that had the council concerned. Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. "The Crimson Alliance, former pirates who have banded together into something approaching a legitimate government. They control 17 systems now and are demanding recognition as a sovereign nation." This was the nightmare scenario that many species had feared. Pirates who couldn't be eliminated becoming powerful enough to demand political legitimacy. The Crimson Alliance claimed they had abandoned raiding in favor of aggressive trade practices and protective taxation of shipping lanes. "They're still pirates," Admiral Chen continued. "They've just learned to dress it up in political language, but they're smart enough to avoid direct confrontation with protected systems. Will you move against them?" "We can't. They haven't attacked any worlds under human protection, and they maintain a facade of legitimacy that gives them some legal standing. We're watching them closely, but unless they cross certain lines, I understood the implication. Humans had built their reputation on protecting the innocent, not on aggressive expansion. Acting against the Crimson Alliance without clear provocation could damage the trust they had worked so hard to establish. There's something else, Admiral Chen said, her voice dropping to a more confidential tone. Something I wanted to discuss with you before you submit your final report. She activated a holographic display showing a star chart of the galaxy's outer rim. Red zones marked pirate-controlled territory. Green zones indicated human-protected space, and yellow areas showed neutral or contested regions. We've identified a pattern in recent attacks, she explained. The raids aren't random anymore. They're systematically targeting species with advanced technology or strategic resources. Preparation for something larger? That's our assessment. Intelligence suggests the various criminal organizations are planning some kind of coordinated action. We're not sure what, but the scope suggests it won't be simple piracy. I studied the chart, noting how the red zones formed an almost perfect circle around the galaxy's core worlds. They're positioning themselves for a siege, or worse. Our analysts think they might be planning to cut off the trade routes that connect the inner systems to the outer colonies. Economic warfare on a galactic scale. The implications were staggering. Such an action could cause economic collapse, food shortages, and the breakdown of interstellar government. Billions of beings could suffer or die. What's the human response? Admiral Chen stood and walked to the observation window. That's what we're debating. We could move preemptively, but that would mean attacking sovereign territories without clear justification. It would violate everything we've stood for. And if you wait? If we wait and they succeed, the galactic community we've worked to protect could collapse entirely. I joined her at the window, looking out at the stars that represented countless worlds and trillions of living beings. Somewhere out there, criminals were planning atrocities on a scale that dwarfed anything we had seen before. You want my recommendation? I said. I want your honest assessment. You've observed us longer than any other non-human diplomat. You understand our capabilities and our limitations. If we ask the Council for authorization to act preemptively, will they support us? I considered the question carefully. In 5 years, I had watched humans transform from mysterious newcomers to the galaxy's most effective peacekeepers. They had earned trust through consistent action and transparent intentions. But they had also demonstrated the capacity for destruction that terrified many species. Some will support you, I said finally. The species under your protection, certainly. Others will oppose any action that appears aggressive. And still others will use the debate as an opportunity to limit human influence. And you? What would you recommend? I thought of the children I had seen playing safely in the streets of New Zephyr. I remembered the grateful faces of colonists who had been liberated from years of slavery. I recalled the words of Captain Chen from that first day. Sometimes hell is the only language that evil understands. I would recommend that you do what humans have always done, I said. Protect the innocent regardless of the political cost. Admiral Chen smiled, the expression transforming her weathered features. Even if it means unleashing hell again? Especially if it means unleashing hell again. As I prepared to submit my final report to the Galactic Council, I reflected on everything I had learned about humanity in the past 5 years. They were not perfect, their methods were sometimes harsh, and their moral certainty could be troubling to species that preferred negotiation to action. But in a galaxy where evil had thrived because good beings were too civilized to stop it, humans represented something precious and dangerous, the willingness to pay any price to protect the innocent. My report would conclude with a simple recommendation. The Galactic Council should grant humans the authority they needed to act decisively against organized crime, because the alternative was not peace, but the victory of those who preyed upon the weak. I had no doubt that some species would resist this recommendation. They would argue that humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too willing to use force as a first resort. They would be right about all of those things, but they would also be missing the point entirely.